Talking. Good morning. Yes. Thank you for that intro, BT. Man, so good to be here. Like BT said, I'm Ben Diaz. Usually you see me behind the piano, so it's a little bit different on this side. But honestly, an honor, a privilege, just as it is to just gather like we would on any Sunday. Man, I already feel full this morning from the time. If you missed the pregame, BT, the reason why he was wearing a knit hat is because he dressed up as Jack Magruder, and Jack Magruder dressed up as BT and was priceless. So that was a lot of fun. And then, yeah, just even that time of just being able to worship together, I think is super helpful. Actually, a lot of the things, do you guys ever go to places and you're like, man, worship was so good this morning, and then someone asks you, like, what songs did you do? And you're like, good ones, and you just can't remember. But the threads that were woven, even if you can't remember the line, are woven internally, and the things will emerge, will rise to the surface, just even in our time together. Just as we continue in our study of the book of John, the way that I want to start is, has anyone ever had that feeling of, like, literal feeling of running out of gas? Not just like the kind of the emotional kind of energy, like actually running out of gas. So my story for this is about 8 years ago, my wife and I and a few other friends, there were 11 of us that took a friend's van. We were going to drive for a road trip, because road trips are fun, out to Colorado, stay at a friend's ranch, meet other people there, stay there for 4 days, and then drive back. Because, you know, I mean, we have 5 kids, plane tickets were like $350. I mean, it was just a lot. So driving out cost you time, but you still have some money in your pocket. So we go out there, spend it was a blast. And just like with any road trip, regardless of how far it is, the ride out is great. When it's time to go home, you're just like, let's just go home, right? You just want to get home. So I took the first shift, and we drove from, it's called Hot Sulphur Springs. You have to drive down the mountains, and then 8 hours later, my first shift was 8 hours. And just because, like, you're making good time, right? You just want to make good time. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. There's 9 friends sleeping in the back. The only other person that was awake was my wife, who's riding shotgun, and that's kind of your goal, is to kind of keep the person awake. And I'm like, look, we're making good time. We're going to get back sooner. And then next thing you know, we're in Nebraska, and the fuel light comes on. I don't know if you've driven through Nebraska, but it's not like there's an exit like every other mile. It's like every other 25 miles. So when the light comes on, it has this fuel mileage gauge, so you can kind of, it's helpful, but at the same time it's stressful, because it tells you, you have 38 miles left. Then you have 37. Then you look and you're like, next exit. And we couldn't look, because in Nebraska at that time, 8 years ago, there was no cell service. So you're kind of going in your app for maps to search for gas stations, and there are none. I mean, you can even get service, and then you look for next exit, 25 miles. You do the math, and you're like, okay, let me turn off the air conditioning. Let me turn off the radio. That has nothing to do with gas, but we'll just conserve everything. And it just gets super quiet. And you just watch that. You're watching 2 things. You're watching the mile marker. Okay, we have 23 miles to go. Oh, we have 36 miles left. Oh, you're just doing the math, just over and over. And you can just feel the tension. Everybody was sleeping in the back still. They didn't know, but my wife and I mean, can you feel the tension, right? You're running out of gas in Nebraska with 9 of your friends in the back, and there's no gas station. You can't call anybody, and it's 1 o'clock at night. Do you feel that tension? So miraculously, we saw an exit, and we're like, oh, thank you, Jesus, because we were praying, right? Thank you, Jesus. And we passed it, and it said, gas station, and then you had to go 5 miles off the exit, right? It's one of those. It's not one where it's like you can see the gas station. It's pitch black. It's like you have to go 5 miles off the exit to go get gas, and then come 5 miles back. And I was like, man, I'm not doing that. We're making good time. I'm not going to go 5 miles out the way. We might run out of gas, but I'm not going 5 miles out the way. So out of trust and, I don't know, pride, I guess, and just not thinking things through, I was just like, all right, let's just trust that there's going to be one left. So, or there's going to be a gas station coming up. 11 miles left on the fuel mileage gauge. And the van is awake now, right? They can feel the tension. And it's just running out, gallon by gallon, mile by mile. Miraculously. And I mean, I don't even know, right? Kim, I don't even know, like, all of a sudden, there was like an exit with a Shell gas station We pull in, and there's like 7 miles left on this Ford F-150 or whatever that van, with that big 12-passenger van. Somehow it pulled in with 7 miles to go. And there was just relief and celebration over just getting gas, and we can make it home. And I didn't learn from that, because on the next shift, I was like, yeah, just let the fuel light come on. Yeah, we'll be out in Nebraska. We'll be fine. But that tension, do you feel that? Do you feel that? We're going to read in the book of John, chapter 2, this tension that's going to come up in this particular story. So I invite you right now, we're going to read this together. It's John chapter 2. So open your Bible app, open your Bible if you'd like. It's going to be on the screens if you'd prefer that. And as you do that, there's 3 invitations. I don't know if you're anything like me, but sometimes when someone says, hey, I'm going to read something, they read through it, and you're just like, you just check out like immediately. They read through it, and you're like, oh, what just happened? So one thing that we're going to do is, before we even read it, there's an invitation to do 3 things. Remember, we're only doing John chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. That's it. That's 11 verses out of the chapter 2 has over 20 verses. Chapter 2 of chapter John is just one of over 20 chapters. The book of John is one of 66 books in the Bible, right? So we're looking at a very small part of Scripture today. So instead of just kind of being like, oh, 11 verses, I'm good. There's a fuller context to just be aware of. We'll try to fill that in a little bit as we go. Second thing is this. We're finally being introduced to Jesus. So if you've been joining us for the Belief series, all in chapter 1, it talks about in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. And it talks about the light and the life and the Word and it becoming flesh, and you don't know who it is, right? There's this tension, this building of, if you read that, you're like, who is it? It's not until verse 17 that we name his name is Jesus Christ. And you're like, oh, Jesus Christ. Wonder what he's like. So that's what the next part of this is. We're coming off of chapter 1. Remember, context is important. At the end of chapter 1, Jesus calls his disciples and invite them to come and see. It's only been a couple days, 2 or 3 days, that he's met his disciples, and now we're turning the chapter into chapter 2. So it's like looking at, I don't know if you guys binge watch stuff, but if you do, you know how it says skip intro, right? Like if you're just like I've been here, just skip the intro. This just gives us context to just kind of be like, where are we at and where are we going leading up to that? It gives you fuller context, and you can actively, as you listen, actively ask the question of, what is Jesus really like? And then the third thing as I read this is to just kind of lean in. This might be a familiar story to you. This might be the first time you've heard this story. But it's just good to lean in, to kind of readjust, because this is a story about a miracle. And miracles are miracles only if you believe them, right? Otherwise, they're just magic tricks or parlor tricks. They're just coincidences. We can reduce something that we're about to read into something that's just, there's an explanation, a worldly explanation to it. Because a miracle is something where it's divine, divinely intervened. If it's just, it'll help stir, do you really believe this or not? You want to be able to ask that question as you read that. So lean in, listen to the details, listen to the story, but even ask that question, because it really matters what filter of belief or unbelief you read it with. All right, everybody good? Everybody there in John? I tried to give you some time to do that. All right, here we go. John chapter 2, verse 1. On the 3rd day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus also was invited to the wedding with his disciples. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast." So they took it. When the master of the feast tasted the water now become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now." This, the first of his signs, Jesus did at Cana in Galilee and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. So whether it's a new story or not, we're going to be talking about this miracle and just kind of breaking it down of like, what is this about? How does this apply? And getting context of this. Here's the first thing that I think is really fun about this passage. The miraculous can happen at any time when you're close to Jesus. The miraculous can happen at any time when you're close to Jesus. So it's good to be near Jesus. Jesus had just, like I was telling you, Jesus had just called his first disciples. This is only the third day, right, that he's kind of hung out with them. On the third day is how this chapter starts. He just hung out with them for 3 days. He's had hung out with his entire life. She's been close to him the entire time. But at any point in time, the miraculous could happen. Mary waited about 30 years. Jesus is about 30 years old right now. His disciples waited about 3 days. The master of the feast, whether he knew it or not, he didn't even know Jesus, and a miracle was happening whether he knew it or not. So you want to be close to Jesus. Can miracles happen if you're not close to Jesus? Absolutely. Jesus is miraculous. I mean, he was born of a virgin. He beat death by rising from the grave. I mean, that's miraculous. He is miraculous. You'll just miss it. So we want to be close to Jesus so we can see the miraculous happen. Proximity and frequency, that's how you stay close to somebody. Proximity, the closeness, and then the frequency of you do that. Let's talk about Mary, his mom. Who was closer to Jesus than his own mom, right? She was the one that spoke to the angel that said, "You will be carrying a son." And she was like, how is this possible? And why me? She talked to an angel, and the angel said, "You're going to bear a son." She bore a son, being a virgin. Remember, her and Joseph had to escape to Egypt because King Herod wanted to murder all 2-year-old boys and younger just to get rid of the Christ, which was her son. And then eventually we realize that this is the same Jesus that dies, is buried, and rises again. Mary is not unfamiliar with miracles, right? So listen to the authority if we go back to verse 3. This is what Mary says to Jesus. It seems like a simple statement. It's just, reporting. Mary says, "They have no more wine." And Jesus says, "What's your wine got to do with me?" And she goes, "They have no wine." But I ain't trying to hear that, see? Do you guys know that song, Positive K? Anybody? No, okay. You can check it out. So there will be probably, 90s rap and Jesus. 90s rap needs some Jesus. But hey, they'll work together. No, Jesus didn't say, what's your wine got? He doesn't say that. No, he says, and when he says woman, right, it's a polite, it's a tender greeting. So it's not the way that we culturalize it in our own culture. It's not like that at all. Because remember, Jesus, who was the Word in the beginning, he was also part of the 10 Commandments, right? One of the 10 Commandments is honor your father and your mother. So he wouldn't disrespectfully say to his mom, "Woman." What's that have to do? He wouldn't do that. It's a gentle way of asking, are you sure? Because I don't really know if this is the time. And so he responds, "Dear woman, what does it have to do with me? And my hour has not yet come." Timing. His mom, this is her response: "Do whatever he tells you." She ignores him, right? She's not like, "Oh, you're right. Yeah, I should probably wait. Let's wait till you're ready." She ignores Jesus and talks to the servants and says, "Do whatever he tells you." I love it, right? The authority of Mary. How in the world does Mary, she realizes, she knows, she was told by an angel, this is the Son of God that happens to be also the Son of Mary. How does the Son of, she can talk to the Son of God like that? She has the authority. How? It's because of her unseen hours. There's so many hours before this. Jesus is 30 years old at this point. So many hours. Who has spent more time with Jesus than Mary? Who has tenderly cared for Mary? Who knows more than Mary what Jesus is capable of? Because of all those unseen hours that we don't even know about because they're not documented. Jesus performed over 30 miracles in just these Gospels. And he's 30 years old, Mary all that time. Our unseen hours really matter because that's how we either grow closer to Jesus or grow farther away from him. And remember, the miraculous can happen at any time. You'll just miss it. The farther you're away, you'll just miss it. You could be the master of the feast drinking miracle wine, and you just be like, "This is good wine." And you just miss the miracle. You're partaking in it, and it's available for you, but even though you're close to Jesus, there's not an intentionality to know him. So what are you doing in your unseen hours? Let's talk about some of the unseen hours yesterday. I'm guessing most of us in our unseen hours, whether seen or unseen, between noon and about 3:30 yesterday, whether you were cheering for one team or the other, you probably invested that time in an unseen way, right? And some people, now that MSU may have won, MSU has won, go green. There we go. Now that they've won, right? Like some people are very seen. What happens in the unseen is now showing up in the scene, right? And what happens in the unseen for maybe some U of M fans, they are like, yeah, let's not talk about that game. This is what Coach Mel Tucker of the MSU Spartans says. I love hearing like what people have to say because it reveals what happens in their unseen hours that show up in the seen hours, right? Between noon and 4, that's all that's really seen. This is what Coach Mel Tucker said about the game yesterday, but he said this like on Tuesday. We all understand the significance of the game. That doesn't take away from the fact that we need to prepare. It's what we do during the week leading up to the game that's going to affect the outcome of the game. It's what you do when nobody sees it. All of a sudden, people are watching, and you can't just flip a switch. You can't just say, oh, now that people are seeing me, that develops character. No, it reveals it. It either reveals it or it reveals a lack of it. What you do when nobody's watching, it's how you prepare for those times. Now, Coach Tucker knows that there's a scheduled time at noon, when the ball gets kicked off, it's time. In this particular case, when you're around Jesus, it can happen anytime. Anytime. So you just want to have proximity, you want to have frequency with Jesus. That's why Mary's so confident. She talks with such authority. So don't miss the miracle that's happening around you. Be ready and available to participate. Jesus didn't draw attention to himself, right? This type of stealthy miracle wasn't just one where he says, hey guys, I know what to do. There's no more wine. The Son of Man is here. He didn't do that, right? It's so stealthy. It's so unassuming. It's almost like, did he really? There's got to be a different explanation. That guy did that? No way. So don't miss it. But you'll believe it the closer you are to Jesus when you spend your unseen hours with him. There's a gentleness to it that he does it. It's not a spectacle. He's not performing spectacles so that people are entertained. He's performing miracles so people can have belief that there is something new. They're working out their faith with fear and trembling as they ask, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. Tip the scales a little bit more. Identify what you don't believe, and he can help you with your belief. All right. Here's the next thing I think that's super cool about this. Heaven offers its highest and best to the lowest and least. Let me say that again. Heaven offers its highest and best to the lowest and least. So in this particular passage, it's the best wine, right? We hear it from the master of the feast. They're like, this is good wine, and you're serving it later than normal. Usually people serve it right at the get-go when people haven't drank anything, they're not intoxicated. They're like, ooh, this is good wine. This is going to be a good party. And then after a while they drink, and then you kind of serve the poor wine. People can't tell because they're intoxicated. In this particular case, heaven offers its highest and best to the lowest and least by doing this. The least statured attenders at this wedding, the servants, have probably one of the most important jobs in this. You read it when it says, Jesus said to the servants. So Mary talks to the servants, do whatever he tells you. Then Jesus addresses them. He obeys his mom. And he goes, a simple task, fill the jars with water. He doesn't give any other context. It's just one thing. You might not even know what the next step is. But the next step right now that Jesus is asking is to fill the jars with water. Little did they know, the servants, little did they know they were going to participate in the first miracle. The lowest statured guests get to have one of the biggest, most significant influences on this miracle by filling jars with water. I mean, that's it. Imagine if they didn't, right? I'm like, who's Jesus? What? No. Okay, that's not my job, but I mean, I guess. There's something significant. The least person, the servant, is invited to participate with Jesus. He didn't ask the bridegroom. He didn't make a spectacle of it and say, bride and groom, you're running out of wine. Come follow me. And, he didn't do that. He asked the servants to do what they were asked to do. And then he makes the best wine and offers it to the least deserving guests. The least deserving guests, the ones that have already drank their fill, they drank too much. He gives the best wine and offers it to them freely. He offers his highest and best to the lowest and least. Now, this is not the first time that we see later. This is Jesus' first miracle. this actually points to Jesus' greatest miracle. His greatest miracle is this, is when Jesus becomes the new wine. So Jesus offers himself to death, to be a sacrifice for us. And it's his blood, his pure and perfect blood, that is poured out, which becomes the new wine, offers it to us, the lowest and least. It says, while we were still sinners, Jesus died for us. While we were still sinners, the lowest and the least. And if you're thinking like, who's the lowest and least? Goodness, nobody is exempt from the lowest and least. But while we were still sinners, he didn't wait for us, hey, get it together so I can finally pour out my sacrifice to you. He didn't wait. He offers his highest and best to the lowest and least. Did you know during the crucifixion in John 19, while Jesus was hanging on the cross, he actually says that he was thirsty. Jesus from the cross, hanging, says, I'm thirsty. You know what this world offered him? They offered him wine vinegar that took a sponge, dipped in it, put it on a stick, and pushed it up against his lips. This world offers the least quality wine, the lowest quality wine, in the least amount available, dip it in a sponge and push it against his lips to the highest and best. While heaven offers its highest and best to us, the lowest and least, you know what we offer back? We offer our cheapest wine in as little abundance as possible. That's what the world offers. But not Jesus. He offers his highest and best to the lowest and least. Now, his disciples that believed at the end of this, they grew up knowing some of these Old Testament prophecies of the new wine, right? That the Messiah will have this new wine. There was, if you were here last week in terms of the Lamb of God, there was a sacrifice that had to happen. And in that sacrifice, the disciples would have heard, oh, in this new wine, there must be some connection. I don't know what it is, but this is exciting. I think this might be the Messiah. And there's this new level of belief that was growing in the disciples. And that's really the goal for us, is to have these new levels of belief. Here's the next thing. Jesus is extravagant. He's extravagant. He doesn't just scrape by. He doesn't just do what's most economical. He's extravagant. Extravagant means exceeding what is reasonable or appropriate. So let's do the math, right? So there were 6 water jars that had about 20 to 30 gallons. Let's say that's an average of 25 gallons per. That's 150 gallons of wine. There's 128 fluid ounces in a gallon. That's 19,200 ounces of good wine. Standard wine bottle, right here, it's 25 ounces, right? You know how many ones of these is that? That's 768 of these. 768. It's not a parlor trick. It's not some magic thing. It's not sleight of hand. 760 of the best wine. That's a lot of wine to happen instantaneously. That's divine. That's a miracle. And that's extravagant. That does not put into account reasonable. That's not reasonable. That's a ton of wine. There's going to be a lot of leftover wine. It's not even appropriate. A lot of the guests had already had their fill. It's not even appropriate. What are you doing? That's not even practical. 760, he's extravagant, man. Your Jesus, my Jesus, is extravagant. He's not withholding. He's not kind of counting the cost. Be like, ooh, 1 bottle times, well, let's do the kind of cheap stuff, like $5. Ooh, yeah, they already had some? No, it's not even. Now, aren't you so glad that Jesus is in charge of all this stuff and not if this was a story about Ben, it would sound like this. It'd be like, and then the next day, Ben and his disciples went to a bar, and Ben ordered 12 waters and then winked at his disciples. Jesus doesn't do that, right? Jesus is stealthy. He's not ostentatious. He's not looking for, free wine. But here's the thing he's extravagant. The point wasn't this. Hey, bottle up all that wine so there's some really good leftovers. You don't do that. You can't put old wine into new wineskins. You can't save that wine. Plus, even if that's a lot of wine. You would almost think that's wasteful. What? No, that's extravagant. Did you know that even just 1 drop of Jesus' blood probably could have saved the world? I mean, probably could. You know what he did? He poured out his entire life. All of it. For you and me. All of it. That's extravagant. He wasn't just I'll just, kind of just a little bit here and a little bit there, just kind of get you kind of cleaned up a little bit. Like all of it. That's extravagant. He traded his perfect life, his pure life, for yours and mine. That's extravagant. Who makes that trade? Heaven offers its highest and best to the lowest and least. Here's the last thing that I think that so 768 of these, it's a lot. The last thing that we want to be able to do is we want to be able to hold the tension and wait well. Hold the tension. So see that piano over there? See that bass, those drums, the guitar back there? All these musical instruments back here, right? There's tension in every single one of them. And the tension is necessary. In this piano, there's 88 keys. There's over 200 strings that are there. And there's a ton of tension in it. I don't know if you guys ever seen a guitar string break when somebody's playing. If you saw a piano string break, it is violent. There's a ton of tension. And the way you find the tension in piano is not by just kind of feeling like, ooh, that feels like enough tension. That feels about right. Because you'll be wrong. The way you do it is by you play the note, and then you listen. Then you play the note, add some more tension, and then you listen. And then you play the note. If you ever heard a piano being tuned, that's what they do over and over and over. And even when it feels like it's the right amount of tension, there's a lot of tension. I don't know if you've ever had in your garage doors the spring break. It's a lot of tension. It's violent. There's warnings there. There's warnings on pianos, right? Don't be messing with your piano on the inside, because you break one of those steel string, you lose an eye. It is violent. Tension is necessary. And there's so many tensions in all of our everyday lives, but let's look at this passage. There's tension in the timing. Remember the running out of gas story? Imagine if you're the bridegroom and the bride. At your wedding, you've planned this, and culturally, it's a big deal to kind of perform well and make sure you've not been that host that runs out of food, right? And nobody wants to be that, run out of wine. And here they are watching cup by cup, guest by guest, the wine running out. And it's a celebration, and they're feeling like, I can't even celebrate. We're running out of wine. This is going to be embarrassing. This is going to be the worst day of our life. It's going to be this and that, and you get so distracted by worry. You get so distracted by doubt. You get so distracted by counting the cost. Oh man, that was another, ooh. And then the wine runs out. Holding the tension. Why did Jesus have to wait till the wine ran out? Right? Why couldn't he just wait till it was running a little low? And they're yeah. Thankfully in my store, I didn't have to run out of gas, and then that'd be a whole nother story. But in this particular case, they run out of wine at their biggest celebration, the day that they've really prepared for, they really loved. There's tension there. Why, Jesus? If Ben asked, what do you really like? Are you really holding the tension? In those drums over there, right? Those drum heads, you have to stretch them. There's a lot of tension there. It's not just kind of loosely drape, a drum skin over that, and just kind of, no, that's a ton of tension. And here's the thing, the more you play it, the more it gets out of tune. So the very thing that you are preparing it for is the very thing that gets you back out of tune. The more you play that piano, the more you play that guitar, the more it gets out of tune, and you have to add the tension back. Tension is necessary. There's tension in Jesus' extravagance, right? We all Jesus is extravagant, but man, he withholds from me. I've asked for miracles. Not only is there not enough, there's none. There's tension there. Man, he's extravagant in wine for drunk guests. All I'm asking for is just healing from a headache. That's chronic pain. All I'm asking for is just a healed relationship with someone. All I'm asking for is this or that. I'm not asking for wine. I don't want wine. There's tension there. Got to hold the tension. You might be feeling this tension. Ben, you say, hey, the miraculous can happen anytime as long as I stay close to Jesus. Well, guess what, bro? I've been close to Jesus a long time. And I don't have a miracle. There's tension. Do you feel it? This is real stuff. It's not just hey, Jesus performed a miracle, and that miracle is available forever. That's not, it is. And there's tension. You got to feel it, right? Just like this. If we took the tension out of that piano, you would not want to listen to it. It would not be playable. There's got to be the tension there between hope and unbelief. There has to be an appropriate level of tension. And it's dynamic. It's not oh, sweet, I believe now. Good, I'm good for the rest of my life. Just like we do with all these instruments, the more you play it, the more it gets out of tune. You gotta always adjust that tension. You gotta be aware of it. You gotta listen. So that's holding the tension and waiting well. Man, we wait for everything, don't we? It feels like we wait for everything. You're waiting for Netflix to load, right? You're waiting. I mean, there's a lot of things you wait for. You wait in line. Man, you wait at stoplights. Some people wait well at stoplights. Some people don't wait well. All right, who are the people that wait well at stoplights? Yeah, right. Yes, sure. Great. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. But we wait all the time. And oftentimes, you don't even have a choice whether you wait or not, but you do have a choice whether you wait well or not. And that's the difference. So here's what we're going to do right now, is we're going to practice waiting well. So this is not one where it's like, oh, cool, service is done. Ben was quick. Awesome. We're not done yet. We're actually going to practice waiting well. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to do it in a way that I do it because, I can only teach from the places that I'm familiar with, right? Like the roads that I'm familiar with. I couldn't teach you about places I've never been. But this is a place I'm familiar with. And it's going to be through a time of worship. But in this time, it's not going to be you sit and watch. There's really an invitation right now to participate. And this is how we can participate. One is there's time to reflect. What is that tension for you? Like, what miracle are you waiting? What do you feel like God is holding out on you for or from? So there's tension there. What is that? There's other questions, too, of like, what do you feel like is running out or has run out in your life? There's going to be time to reflect on that. And we're going to leave space. We're going to leave like 3 songs worth of space. That's usually what some people are like. When I teach piano and like when we have recitals, when I hand them a program and there's like 30-some students or 40-some students, I just release the pressure in the room and just tell them, all right, you probably got the program and your first question is this: how long is this going to be? And I usually respond, it's going to be like 4 hours. And people are just like, oh man, it's a joke. This is not going to be 4 hours. It's going to be 3 songs. You can do it. And during this time, it's not just, hey, just listen to the songs and just observe. It really is like, what is the tension? What is the miracle that you're waiting for? What is Jesus really like? So here are the 4 things about waiting well, right? We're all going to have to wait, but we all can choose how we wait. Your posture matters. I enjoy basketball. I'm sure many of you enjoy basketball too. There's this posture in basketball called the triple threat position where you can have the ball. Once you have the ball, you have 3 options. You can either shoot, pass, or dribble. And you think about it in that order, right? So your posture matters, the way you hold that ball. Because if you hold the ball like this, and you have somebody guarding you, you know what they're going to do. What are they going to do? They're going to take the ball. Yeah, they're going to steal the ball from you, right? Because we have an enemy that all his job is to do is to seek you out, rob you, steal from you, destroy you, and even kill you. Yeah, like that's what it says. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not being extravagant in my word. It's for real. So if you have the ball, you don't want to get it stolen from you. So your posture matters. And one of the best ways to adjust your posture is to trust that his ways are better than your ways. You've already heard me say this. When you wait well, your unseen hours matter. You have 160 hours in a week. Most of those, nobody sees. Nobody sees. But it shows up, doesn't it? It shows up in when other people see you. The way you prepare really impacts the seen hours of your life. So this is going to be kind of those unseen moments. Your posture will matter. How you step into these 3 songs will also matter, right? If you're just like, all right. And there's no shame in that. That's just a calling of attention for each of us. These are the moments. These ordinary moments will make up your extraordinary life, right? The extraordinary just doesn't happen. You don't just flip a switch and say, you know what? Let's do the extraordinary today. It's in the ordinary that actually reveals the extraordinary that's within you. So develop in these ordinary hours. As you wait well, don't wish for time away. Don't wish time away, don't wish for time back, right? Stay in the present. And then this is the last thing that we're going to do. We're going to worship in that wait. So as we wait, we're going to spend some time through worship. I'm going to invite Andrea to kind of set up this time a little bit of our worship time.
Yeah. So the first song that we're going to be doing is one that Ben and I wrote together, but it's called Worship in the Wait. And so it really it's very fitting for this morning. And as we continue to talk about the wait and holding the tension, I feel like there's a release of control that needs to happen. Like even for me, like whether you're waiting, maybe it's a known time and you're just starting to feel anxious in that moment, waiting for a certain result or answer back. And even worse, if you're waiting in the unknown and you don't know how long you're going to be waiting for, but there's a sense of choosing what you're going to do in that moment, to worship well in that moment, to remind yourself, this is who God has been to me in the past and will continue to be in the future. And so you'll kind of hear in this song, it's super simple, but there's even something you could put in your own words of who he's been. Maybe he's been your friend, a comforter, maybe he's been your protector, whatever that is. Like meditating on those things in this moment right here now, this is an opportunity to quiet your minds and your thoughts. And we're just going to choose to just sit in this moment, and our response is going to be to worship.
Lord, I will worship in the wait, knowing that you will keep me safe. No matter what may come my way, yes, Lord, I'll worship in the wait. Lord, I will worship in the wait, knowing that you will keep me safe. No matter what may come my way, yes, Lord, I'll worship in the wait. And you are my shelter, yes, you are. You are my comfort, yes, you are. And no, I won't hurry, give in to the worry, knowing that your ways are better than mine, and your